Disturbing new footage of the Apalachee High School shooting goes viral. For decades, going back to the 90s, there have been shocking cases where students wake up and make the horrifying choice to become killers.
Today, the news coming in of a deadly school shooting, 2 students and 2 teachers killed.
Oh my God!
Unfortunately, this tragic pattern has continued, and a recent event at Apalachee High School in Georgia left the world in disbelief.
As soon as he opened the door, he got shot.
Recently, a disturbing video surfaced online showing a 14-year-old student who had gone on a deadly rampage within the school grounds.
And I heard the shots. I heard it was 5 or 6 shots.
What could drive such a young person to such a drastic and violent act? Join us as we unveil the shocking footage of the Apalachee High School shooting. Apalachee High School shooting. Winder is a small, rural town in Georgia, home to about 20,000 people. It's located around 50 miles northeast of downtown Atlanta and about 25 miles west of the county seat, Barrow County. The town is known for its friendly, middle-class community, making it a place where families often settle down. However, like many places, Winder is not perfect. It has faced its share of challenges, including a troubling history of crime, notably a series of murders that took place during the 1960s and 1970s. At the outskirts of Winder lies Apalachee High School, which opened its doors in 2000. The area where the school was built used to be farmland, surrounded by towering Georgian pines. Over the past 15 years, though, the landscape has changed significantly. New buildings and infrastructure have emerged along the winding 2-lane roads leading into the town. Today, Apalachee High School has expanded to serve about 1,900 students in grades 9 to 12. In Georgia, all schools are required by law to conduct at least one drill to prepare for active shooter situations by October 1st of each school year. On the morning of September 4th, 2024, as schools across the United States were kicking off a new school year, Apalachee High School received a chilling anonymous call. This call was the first sign of a looming threat that would soon overshadow the school. The caller warned that there would be shootings at 5 schools in Barrow County, and specifically stated that Apalachee High School would be the first target. At 9:45 a.m., a 14-year-old student named Colt Gray left his Algebra 1 class and stepped into the hallway. According to a classmate, Layla Kra, Colt had turned back toward the classroom and knocked on the door to be let in. The school's doors were designed to automatically lock after someone exited or entered, requiring someone inside to open them. One student attempted to unlock the door, but upon noticing the gun Colt was carrying, they quickly refused to let him back in. This quick thinking prevented a potential disaster in the Algebra 1 classroom. Unfortunately, Colt was undeterred. Instead of giving up, he walked into a nearby classroom and unleashed a barrage of about 15 rounds on defenseless students who had no way to protect themselves. The nightmare had begun. Christina Iremi was born in Romania and moved to the United States 2 decades ago. She was a dedicated maths teacher at the local school, and since she had no children of her own, she cherished her students as if they were her family. Christina was not only skilled in mathematics, but also a talented dancer who shared the beauty of Romanian traditional dance with her students. As the priest of the nearby Romanian Orthodox Church described her, she was someone you could always rely on. However, none of this mattered to the gunman Gray, who mercilessly shot her down. On that fateful Wednesday morning, another maths teacher also lost his life. Richard Aspinwall, a 39-year-old man, was remembered as a wonderful dad and a fantastic father. He served as the defensive coordinator for the school's football team and had previously taught and coached at the nearby Mountain View High School. This tragic event was not the act of a troubled teenager seeking revenge on his teachers. Gray's only aim was to kill as many people as possible. 2 14-year-old students were among the victims. Mason Schermerhorn had just started attending Apalachee High School. He was a cheerful boy who loved reading, playing video games, and dreaming about his trips to Walt Disney World. When the shooting started, he had left his classroom to go to the restroom. As chaos erupted around him, he texted his mother to say he was safe inside. But Gray found him there and took his life in cold blood. The 4th victim, Christian Angulo, was fondly remembered by his classmates as a funny and laid-back kid. His older sister, Lizette Angulo, described him on a GoFundMe page created to help pay for his funeral as a very good kid, very sweet, and so caring. At 10:20 a.m., local law enforcement was first alerted to the active shooter at the school. Just a week before this tragic event, Apalachee High School had implemented a safety measure that may have helped prevent an even greater loss of life. Teachers were provided with ID cards equipped with a panic button that could alert law enforcement. This device used digital mapping and real-time location tracking to help educators respond quickly in emergencies, and during this shooting incident, it proved invaluable. School resource officers were the first to confront Gray, and he surrendered without putting up a fight. However, the damage had already been done. In less than an hour, he had taken 4 lives and injured 9 others, leaving a community shattered and mourning. In a recent interview with CNN, survivor Ronaldo Vega shared a harrowing account of the terrifying incident. He revealed that if he had gone to the restroom as he intended before the shooting started, he might not have survived. At the time, he was sitting in his second period maths class when chaos erupted. When the shooting began, he quickly ducked under his desk to hide from the danger. The shooter entered the classroom and fired 4 to 6 shots before moving on to another room, continuing his rampage. Once the danger seemed to have passed, Vega bravely approached the door and barricaded it with chairs to prevent the shooter from returning. Caught up in the rush of adrenaline, he didn't realize he had been shot until he crawled behind the teacher's desk and noticed blood on his body. "I think it hit something, and it hit me," Vega recalled. He described seeing a hole and a little blood on the side of his body. Initially, he thought it belonged to someone else because he had noticed blood on the floor where he had been lying. Another student who experienced this nightmare recounted what must have been one of the most terrifying days of her life. The bravery in her voice was undeniable, yet it's heartbreaking to acknowledge that teenagers now have to confront such traumatic events within the supposed safety of their schools, a place where they should feel secure. Sadly, this has become the new reality of our nation, leading to a disturbing transformation in classrooms across the country. Assassination. Classrooms. Schools have always been places where students learn and grow. However, as we entered the 21st century, our children began to face some dark and troubling influences. A striking example of this was the event on July 13th, 2024, when a young man named Thomas Matthew Crooks attempted to assassinate presidential candidate Donald Trump. Crooks, just 21 years old, had graduated from Bethel Park High School in 2022. At the time of his attack, he was working as a kitchen assistant. As investigators looked deeper into his background, shocking details emerged. It was discovered that he had researched Ethan Crumbley, the teenager responsible for the tragic shooting that claimed 4 lives at Oxford High School in Michigan. Crooks reportedly admired Crumbly and seemed to share a similar ambition: to become the most notorious school shooter in Michigan's history. Schools, once viewed as safe havens for education, are increasingly becoming breeding grounds for violence and are being targeted by troubled teens who seek notoriety through their actions. Each shooting incident serves as a twisted source of inspiration for others, encouraging them to commit their acts of violence, leaving behind a trail of innocent lives lost. Now, the case of Thomas Crooks leads us to wonder about another young figure, Colt Gray, a 14-year-old who, in a shocking turn of events, decided to pick up a semi-automatic rifle with harmful intentions. Understanding these motivations is crucial if we are to find a way to protect our schools and our children from the rising tide of violence and despair. On September 4th, 2024, Colt Gray attended his second day at Apalachee High School. Since the new school year began, he had recently transferred there, and his presence went largely unnoticed by his classmates, who described him as a quiet individual. One classmate remarked to a BBC reporter that Colt never really spoke, adding, "I couldn't tell you what his voice sounded like or even describe his face to you. He was just there." Unfortunately, no one could have guessed the dark thoughts swirling in Colt's mind that day, just as few could understand the chaotic circumstances he faced at home. In July 2011, shortly after Colt was born, his parents, Colin and Marcy Gray, bought a small farm in Barrow County, located on the outskirts of Athens. Marcy revealed that the couple dreamed of creating a non-profit riding school to provide therapeutic horseback riding for underprivileged children in the area. Colt and his younger siblings grew up on that farm until 2019, when the family had to sell it. Their parents' dream of a riding school crumbled due to Colin's 3 back surgeries, which led to a loss of income and triggered a turbulent relationship between them. After moving from the farm, the family faced multiple lawsuits from landlords, and by 2022, they were evicted from their home for failing to pay rent. During the eviction, deputies seized 3 firearms, including an AR-15 rifle and a hunting bow, although the weapons were later returned to Colin. On November 2022, Marcy Gray left her family and took to social media to speak about her husband's abusive childhood. She wrote about his early memories of trauma, including getting a broken arm at age 8 while asleep and sustaining severe injuries from a bar stool that cracked his skull. Marcy portrayed herself as a savior, claiming, "I truly believe that the Lord sent me to him because no one else was strong enough to stay by his side through thick and thin. I'm not about to give up on him now. We are just taking a break." However, a month later, Marcy announced on LinkedIn that she had separated from Colin. What she did not mention publicly was her troubled past. Marcy had a criminal record dating back 2 decades, with multiple arrests for offenses such as drug possession, aggravated battery, theft, and criminal trespassing. Court records indicate that she faced violating traffic offenses in 2007, 2008, 2014, and 2019. There were even reports of her having threatened her husband's life, and of a particularly alarming incident in which she tied up her mother for 24 hours. On May 2023, Marcy announced on social media that she had gained custody of 2 of her children. Meanwhile, Colt, her eldest son, found himself under investigation for making a shooting threat online. In the same month, investigators from the Jackson County Sheriff's Office interviewed the 13-year-old Colt and his father about a threat made on the chat platform Discord regarding a potential school shooting. The FBI's National Threat Operations Center had received anonymous tips about a shooting threat aimed at an elementary school. The anonymous user had written, "I'm committed to a mass shooting and waiting a good 2 to 3 years. I can kill myself yet because I'm not contributing anything to culture. I need to go out knowing I did." This account referenced Adam Lanza, the Sandy Hook shooter, and expressed transphobic sentiments, lashing out against the acceptance of transgender individuals in society. Colt denied making the threats, and his father explained that while they owned rifles, Colt only used them under supervision, and he was actively teaching him about firearms safety and outdoor activities. Colin also shared that Colt had been bullied at school, with classmates pinching him and calling him names, including slurs suggesting he was gay. Colt had previously attended Jackson County School District from February to August 2022 before transferring to Apalachee High. Although he was not arrested due to insufficient evidence linking him to the Discord threats, it's clear that the turmoil in his life weighed heavily on him. With his parents estranged and his siblings separated from him, Colt was left feeling isolated as his mother continued to navigate her legal troubles. On November 2023, Marcy vandalized her husband's truck, writing "abuse" and "liar" on it. Just 2 days later, she was arrested at a Walmart in Winder due to an active warrant from another county. Authorities discovered methamphetamine, fentanyl pills, and a glass pipe in her car, leading to her arrest, along with another man present in the vehicle. In December, she pleaded guilty to several charges, including criminal damage to property and family violence, under Georgia's First Offender Act, which allowed her to avoid a formal conviction. Following her guilty plea, Marcy was sentenced to 5 months of probation after spending over a month in custody. This agreement prohibited her from contacting Colin except through a third party for divorce and custody negotiations. Marcy's most recent arrest occurred in April, just months before Colt's shooting. She faced charges for possession of methamphetamine, fentanyl, and muscle relaxants, along with aggravated battery, theft, criminal trespass, false imprisonment, and failure to appear in court for a January charge in Fitzgerald County. This troubling family history emerged after the shooting, leading many to wonder if the tragedy could have been avoided had Colt been removed from his unstable home environment. Reports suggested that Colin had been abusive toward his son, and Georgia's Child Services had previously been in contact with the family. The story of Colt Gray paints a grim picture of a troubled teenager struggling with overwhelming emotions in a chaotic household. In a misguided search for relief, Colt picked up an AR-15 semi-automatic rifle and tragically opened fire on 2 of his teachers and 2 fellow students. This incident was not an isolated case. It was part of a disturbing trend, with 385 mass shootings recorded in the United States in 2024 alone, making the Apalachee High School shooting the deadliest in Georgia's history. Statistics reveal an alarming pattern. In 2023, 2 people were shot every day in the United States, with no signs of this violence abating. Just 3 days after the Apalachee shooting, 2 more people lost their lives, and 13 others were injured in 3 separate incidents, one of which occurred at a school. How did we reach this point? How did the once safe space of a school become a place of fear and violence? The Columbine Massacre. On April 20th, 1999, 2 teenagers, 18-year-old Eric Harris and 17-year-old Dylan Klebold, arrived at Columbine High School in Colorado in separate cars around 11:10 a.m. They walked into the school cafeteria carrying 2 duffel bags, each filled with a 20-pound propane bomb. They had set the bombs to detonate at 11:17 a.m. The two boys had been planning this violent attack for over a year. Even before that, their behavior had raised concerns. In 1996, Harris created a private website on America Online, AOL, and by 1997, he was posting blogs about vandalism, skipping school, and explosives. Disturbingly, he once wrote, "All I want to do is kill and injure as many of you as I can," targeting specific individuals like a fellow student named Brooks Brown. Klebold's journals also contained shocking confessions, including dark fantasies about harming women. By 1999, their emotional turmoil had escalated into a desire to commit horrific acts. When the bombs they planted in the cafeteria failed to explode, Harris and Klebold entered the school, dressed in long trench coats, and began shooting. By 11:35 a.m., they had killed 12 students and a teacher and injured over 20 others, most of whom were trapped in the school library. Just half an hour later, both took their own lives. This tragic incident marked the deadliest school shooting in the United States at that time, a record it held until 2012, and remains the worst shooting in Colorado's history. Today, the name Columbine is closely associated with school shootings in America, and although Harris and Klebold are gone, their actions continue to cast a long shadow over the nation. The Columbine massacre sparked a troubling trend of violence in schools, as many subsequent shooters tried to mimic Harris and Klebold's actions. In 2015, an investigation by Mother Jones uncovered a heartbreaking reality: 14 individuals had plotted mass shootings on the anniversary of the Columbine attack, with 13 others hoping to surpass the original death toll. Survivors of these attacks have admitted that they were competing with one another, seeking to inflict as much harm as possible, as if in a twisted contest. As the years have passed since Columbine, connections to this event continue to surface. In 2013, an 18-year-old student at Arapahoe High School shot a fellow student while seeking revenge against a debate coach. This shooter had studied both the Columbine and Sandy Hook incidents. Similarly, Adam Lanza, who perpetrated the Sandy Hook tragedy, was obsessed with Columbine and had researched other shootings, including the Northern Illinois University shooting in 2008. The shooter at NIU, Stephen Kazmierczak, also looked into both Columbine and the Virginia Tech massacre before launching his attack. The Virginia Tech shooter, Seung-Hui Cho, idolized Harris and Klebold, viewing them as martyrs. Nicholas Cruz, the shooter in the Parkland High School incident, expressed admiration for previous attackers, including the Columbine shooters. What's chilling is that the legacy of Columbine, which occurred before the rise of social media, has evolved into a distorted legend. This simplified narrative, as described by journalist Dave Cullen, portrays Harris and Klebold as misunderstood outcasts seeking revenge against bullies. However, they were not lonely misfits. They targeted anyone and everyone. Their initial plan was to use bombs, with the shooting seen as an afterthought, a more exciting part of their violent scheme. Today, many young people who feel like outsiders express their anger and frustration online, sometimes idolizing the killers and spreading false information about them. The media helped create the myth of Columbine by jumping to conclusions, which has led to a skewed understanding of the events. Contrary to popular belief, Harris and Klebold did not achieve their goal of heroically challenging the school system. Their plan fell apart when their bombs failed to detonate, forcing them into a desperate situation. Instead of escaping or going out in a blaze of glory, they ended their lives after realizing their mission had failed. While Columbine was not the first mass shooting in the US, it undeniably ushered in a new era of violence in schools. Efforts to dispel the myths surrounding Columbine have been largely unsuccessful, as misinformation continues to spread on the internet. Since 1999, we have faced the ongoing threat of mass shooters in our schools. Ironically, every new incident garners more media attention, creating a cycle where the deadlier the event, the more likely it is to inspire someone else to commit a similar act of violence. The monster of school shootings feeds on itself. As we reflect on what has transpired since Columbine, we must ask ourselves if we have learned anything, and if there's any hope that this cycle of violence will ever end. Rising school shootings. Since 1999, astonishing progress has been made, but this might leave you feeling puzzled. We are struggling, and our failures are piling up like a huge mountain that we are trying to climb. This is what the media reports, what the graphs show, and what the families of the victims of school shootings, like those at the Apalachee High School, are saying. According to the Washington Post, from 1999 to 2017, there was an average of 11 school shootings each year, with the numbers never exceeding 16. However, starting in 2018, gun violence in schools began to rise dramatically, hitting 30 shootings that year. During the COVID-19 lockdown in 2020, those numbers fell back to what they were before 2018. But as schools reopened in 2021, they surged again. That year, there were 42 school shootings in K-12 schools, and in 2022, the count rose to 46, marking the highest number of school shootings since at least 1999. Tragically, more than half of the school shootings in the US were carried out by children. The average age of a school shooter is just 16. Among these are cases like a 6-year-old boy who intentionally shot a classmate and a 15-year-old girl who did the same after a friend rejected her romantic advances. The statistics on gun violence are shocking. CBS reports that there have been 218 shootings in U.S. schools, with 10 of those occurring in Georgia, including the Apalachee High School shooting, though that particular incident was not included in the tally at the time. School shootings have become more common in the eastern states compared to the western states. Almost 51% of these shootings took place on school days while classes were ongoing, while the remainder happened during extracurricular activities. The Gun Violence Archive presents a grimmer picture, defining a mass shooting as an event in which 4 or more people are injured or killed. Their data includes shootings in homes and public places, revealing that in each of the last 4 years, there have been over 600 mass shootings, averaging nearly 2 a day. Since the 1960s, incidents classified as mass shootings, where 4 or more people are killed or injured, account for only a small fraction of overall gun deaths and injuries in U.S. schools. A staggering 75% of deaths and 68% of injuries occur in incidents that do not qualify as mass shootings, which often receive less media attention. In response to the tragic shooting at Columbine High School in 1999, many states began requiring active shooter drills, which reached 95% of public schools by the 2015 to 2016 school year. Schools have also implemented safety protocols and tools to enhance awareness of gun violence. One of these tools, the CIXID, was used by teachers at Apalachee High School to alert local law enforcement during the incident. The American gun culture seeps into every aspect of life, from Hollywood to video games and now, tragically, into our schools. It's no surprise that the international community perceives the US as a nation that embraces gun violence. The ease of access to firearms has resulted in a staggering increase in gun-related deaths since 1999. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, 48,830 people died from gun-related injuries in the US in 2021, a record-breaking 8% increase from the previous year. While mass shootings and gun homicides dominate media headlines, gun suicides are even more prevalent. In 2021, there were 26,328 gun-related suicides compared to 20,958 homicides. This averages out to over 50 gun-related deaths each day. The grim reality becomes even clearer when we compare these statistics to those of countries like Canada, Australia, England, and Wales. For instance, Canada has only 40% of the gun homicides that the US does, Australia has 11%, and England and Wales have just 4%. A Swiss-based research project, the Small Arms Survey, estimated in 2018 that 390 million guns were circulating in the US, which translates to about 120.5 firearms for every 100 residents. In contrast, Lebanon has 31.9 firearms per 100 residents, and Iceland has 31.7. Despite the severe violence we've witnessed over the past 2 decades, a significant number of Americans still support gun control. A 2022 Gallup poll revealed that 57% of Americans favored stricter gun laws, while 32% opposed any changes to current gun legislation, and 10% believed laws should be loosened. Among Democrats, 91% support stricter laws, but only 24% of Republicans and 45% of independent voters agree. Furthermore, only 10 states have banned the use of assault weapons. Even in Georgia, the state where the Apalachee High School shooting occurred, laws have been relaxed to allow citizens to carry firearms without a permit or license. Now it's time for today's subscriber pick. Disturbing footage of the Apalachee High School shooting has spread like wildfire across the internet. At Apalachee High School, a quiet morning turned into a nightmare. Students were in class, chatting and joking, when suddenly the fire alarm rang. Everyone thought it was just a drill until loud bangs echoed through the halls. Panic spread. Teachers locked doors, students huddled under desks, and the air was thick with fear. A masked figure carrying a gun roamed the school. The attacker's motives were unclear, but it felt like pure chaos. One student, 16-year-old Mia, found herself hiding in the library. With trembling hands, she texted her family, unsure if she'd see them again. Then, in a moment of bravery, Mia crawled towards the emergency exit and managed to escape. As police arrived, the gunman was cornered, and after a tense standoff, they were arrested. The aftermath was heavy tears, questions, and relief that it was over. But for those who survived, Apalachee High would never be the same again. How could something so terrifying happen in what was supposed to be a place of learning and safety? Let us know your answer in the comments section. Aftermath of the shooting and response. The aftermath of this tragedy has led to criminal charges against Colt Gray, who appeared in court 2 days after the shooting, alongside his father, Colin Gray. They faced serious charges. Colt was charged with 4 counts of felony murder, while his father was charged with second-degree murder, manslaughter, and child cruelty. This was a significant legal move against a parent in connection with a school shooting. Prosecutors accused Colin Gray of knowingly allowing his son to possess a firearm, having given him the AR-15 rifle used in the shooting as a Christmas gift. It's shocking that after a 2023 interview regarding Colt's online threats about a school shooting, Collins still thought gifting his son a semi-automatic rifle was appropriate. Colt faces the possibility of capital punishment, though the judge has clarified that he will not be executed. He is being tried as an adult and could face up to 180 years in prison if convicted. Throughout the trial, Colt spoke very little and did not request bail or enter a plea, nor did his father. Both remain in custody until their next court appearance in December. If Colt's motive was to gain notoriety, he certainly achieved that, at least until the next troubled teenager comes along to potentially set a new record for school shootings. Whether it was a cry for help or a reflection of toxic masculinity amidst youthful struggles, the truth remains. The roots of this violence can often be traced back to events like the Columbine shooting. On September 6, 2024, the town of Winder came together to remember and honor the victims of a tragic shooting. Around 1,000 people, including several politicians, gathered to pay their respects. A touching memorial was set up outside the school, where students, parents, and community members left heartfelt tributes like flowers, balloons, and handwritten notes. The local high school football team had a game scheduled for that day, but instead, the event was replaced with a solemn prayer vigil to reflect on the loss. Just 2 days after the shooting, a vigil was held for the victims at Monroe Area High School, where hundreds of candles flickered against the backdrop of profound grief. As tears flowed down sorrowful faces, expressions of loss and mourning filled the air, marking the community's sorrow for 4 of its brightest lights. To support the victims' families, GoFundMe campaigns were launched to help with expenses, and local businesses, restaurants, and organizations quickly organized additional fundraisers and memorial services in the aftermath of the tragedy. Later, on September 20th, 2024, students from schools across Georgia participated in a walkout and observed a moment of silence to remember those who had lost their lives. Meanwhile, Apalachee High School, where the shooting occurred, is set to reopen its doors on September 24th, 2024. The White House confirmed that President Joe Biden was updated on the tragic shooting by Liz Sherwood Randall, his Homeland Security advisor. The administration emphasized its commitment to staying closely connected with federal, state, and local authorities as more details emerge. Vice President Kamala Harris praised the quick actions of first responders and added that tragedies like this don't have to be inevitable. Attorney General Merrick Garland expressed deep sorrow for the lives lost and the people impacted by the tragedy. During a press briefing later that day, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre stressed the urgent need for stronger gun laws, stating measures like universal background checks. Governor Brian Kemp of Georgia shared a message of sympathy, asking his fellow Georgians to pray for the safety of students everywhere. Atlanta Mayor Andre Dickens expressed his support for those affected, along with gratitude for the law enforcement officers who responded to the scene. U.S. Representative Mike Collins, whose district covers the school, issued a statement offering prayers for the victims and their families. However, his response was met with backlash from gun control advocates, who pointed out that he had previously promoted guns in a campaign ad while denying the outcome of the 2020 election. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene from Georgia also shared her condolences on social media. Like Collins, she too faced criticism for using guns in her political ads and for promoting conspiracy theories about past school shootings, like the 2018 Parkland tragedy, which she falsely claimed was staged to push for stricter gun laws. Former President Donald Trump expressed his heartbreak on Truth Social, writing, "Our hearts are with the victims and their loved ones in Winder, GA." These precious children were taken from us far too soon by a sick and twisted individual. Meanwhile, Republican vice presidential nominee J.D. Vance weighed in, calling school shootings a grim fact of life. Instead of gun control, he argued for stronger school security, saying that schools are easy targets that need better protection. What do you think about the shocking footage of the Apalachee High School shooting? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section.